welcome to another edition of Did You Know Doctor Who, or what you may or may not know about Doctor Who. This time we're going to have a look at what is considered by many as one of the greatest Dalek stories, as well as one of the greatest stories in general, Genesis of the Daleks. I hope you enjoy. The story was created as a result of the general attitude towards Daleks at the time. After several defeats and a comically portrayal in Death to the Daleks, audiences and producers alike found the Daleks weak and silly. As such, Terry Nation came up with the origin story for the Daleks to make the Daleks scary again. However, another factor was that the previous stories had all felt very similar to each other, and production wanted a change of Dalek's story. As hinted at during their first appearance, the Nazi symbolism for the Daleks was reintroduced, and heavily featured in this story. The Khalids, for example, dressed like Dalek officers, and the idea of race superiority is elevated to its most obvious, with the so-called inferior races being exterminated. Even Davros was inspired by Joseph Mengele, especially the whole experimenting on people factor. Originally, the serial was even darker, with a scene including the Khalids executing people with machine guns. In fact, several scenes were cut for being too scary. Working titles included Genesis of Terror and Daleks Genesis of Terror. They really wanted the Genesis, didn't they? Some of the foul guns were recycled guns from the Dravins from Galaxy 4. Parts of an Ice Warrior costume was used for the mutants. Michael Wisher wore a kilt when playing Davros, as it helped him use the Dalek base without the tightness of regular trousers. It has been stated by Russell T Davies that this serial is arguably the catalyst of the Time War. This is the final appearance of the Foul, however they do appear in audiobooks and novels afterwards. This is the first time that the TARDIS does not appear in a story, and it would not happen again until the episode Midnight. This is the first time Daleks have a ray gun effect when firing its gun. This is the final 6-part serial that isn't a finale, due to the fact that longer serials were being criticised and the production wanted shorter serials from this point on. Originally, the Doctor would have met the Time Lord in a lush garden, but this idea was disliked and thus changed. This is Tom Baker's favourite serial and was Terry Nation's favourite script. Initially, after Davros was exterminated, his life support system would have beeped indicating his survival. However, this was changed due to wanting Davros's fate to be ambiguous, despite production already planning his return. Part 3 originally had a subplot where Sarah Jane would get radiation poisoning, but this felt too similar to the Daleks, where the Doctor and his companions suffered the same sickness. Part 5 was originally more action-packed and showing the Doctor destroying the Dalek embryos, but once again this was cut to make it more ambiguous whether he actually went through with it. Gas attack in Part 1 was created using dry ice and green lighting. Terry Nation created Davros after finding the Daleks' dialogue to be boring, especially when they were giving long speeches. Davros was made to be the spokesman for the Daleks. Elizabeth Sladen and several other younger actors were terrified when first seeing Davros on set. The film Things to Come was the influence for this story. The Daleks were repainted 1960s models and were referred to as dummies to differentiate them from other Dalek models. The story is considered by many as the greatest story of the classic era and in Doctor Who in general, being rated number 1 in Radio Times and the Doctor Who magazine, being one of the first to be released on home media and being one of the most repeated Doctor Who stories of the classic era. And that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Genesis of Daleks is certainly one of the greatest Doctor Who stories ever, and it's certainly one of the greatest Doctor Who stories in the classic era, one of the best serials of them all. It deserves that title. It's genuinely one of the darker stories of the Tom Baker era, and it's certainly one of the most memorable, introducing perhaps one of the Doctor's greatest nemesis ever, Davros, who is certainly one of my favourite villains in Doctor Who. And the Daleks, well, they're certainly my number 1 favourite villains, and this is just such a great origin story for them. The whole Nazi symbolism is truly frightening when you look at the Daleks and who they are and what they believe in. And this really shows what the Daleks are all about. Mean, menacing, and truly evil. There's almost no spectre of good in them. And it's so great that Davros didn't die in this, because I'm glad they brought him back, even if the next serial, Destiny of Daleks, is pretty crap, all things considered. But luckily there are the other serials and obviously the New Who stories, which involve Davros, which are just so good. This is a great origin story and a great Dalek story overall, and one of the best classic era stories. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.